welcome to Sterling Heights Public Library. My name is Brent, and today we're going to smoke roast a chicken. Come on down and I'll show you how to set this thing up. Okay, so here I've got about a 6-pound chicken. Nothing particularly special about this thing, but it's just a whole chicken. I took the wrapper off of it, drained off any liquid. I made sure to get any loose bits out of the inside, and I did check it over, and I had to pull a couple of pin feathers off. No big deal if you got to do that. They're not a big deal. And I just patted it dry with some paper towels, and I've got a little bit of a dry rub I mixed up here. All this is a tablespoon of salt, a tablespoon of brown sugar, and a couple of teaspoons of just commercial chili powder. I'm just going to go ahead and work those together into one mixture. Exact measurements are not a big deal. And we're going to take that and just sprinkle it and rub it into the bird on all sides. And you'll see I've got this thing set in about a 9x13 Pyrex pan. That is going to help not only catch juices, it also catches any stray rub. So just coat every little bit of this with that. Work it in there good. If you got the wingtips still on the bird, you can just kind of tuck those back in behind. The other one is not on this particular bird, so we're not going to worry about that one. But once we've got this pretty well all the way around, and you can use the bird to kind of catch any that's floating around down in here. We're going to take this whole pan and stick it in the fridge for at least a couple hours, just to let the seasonings penetrate. We're not going to cover this, so we don't really want a lot of extra moisture on this thing. So we'll come back to this after at least a couple hours. You can actually prep this the night before too, and then we'll get a fire going and get her on the coals. So we're back. The bird's been marinating for several hours with the dry rub. You can see it's drawn a little bit of juice out of it. I've got a fire going here on one side of the grill. I've got an old aluminum pie plate here. We're going to take a little bit of water and add that into the pie plate. It's going to do a couple of things. That's going to help mitigate the temperature in here. And also, it's going to catch any drips from the chicken. Go ahead and put the grill grate on. Chicken can go right on over here. It's going over the pan, away from the fire. And I have got some chunks of wood here, which I'm going to put in. We're going to use these. These are going to generate our smoke. This here is maple. I happen to have a tree that needed a little pruning earlier, so we're going to use some of that. Just going to put that right on there. And we'll put the lid on. Now, if you don't have trees in your yard to work with, you can use commercial chips or chunks. If you're using chips, you're probably going to want to soak them a little bit, and rather than putting them directly on the fire, if you put them in like an old tuna can or something, that'll work pretty well, and set that right on the coals, and that'll help to let them smolder a little bit. Now, this particular grill does have a temperature sensor on it, which is going to come in pretty handy. But if you don't have one of those, it's not the end of the world. You can control your temperature pretty well with your vent on the top. So I'm going to close this vent about halfway. The bottom vent is fully open, and that should get us a relatively slow fire with a fair amount of smoke from the wood. We're not trying to do this blazing fast. We're doing what they call indirect heat. And this is going to take probably somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, depending on the size of your bird and the heat you've got going on here. So we're gonna, don't be pulling the top off of this thing regularly. The more you check, the longer it's going to take. So we're going to let this thing go for a good 45 minutes to an hour before I even look at it. You do want to keep track of the amount of smoke coming out of your vent. If you start seeing the smoke really dwindle, you may have to adjust your vents, or you may have to open it up to check and maybe possibly add a little bit more wood or a little bit more charcoal to it. we're going to check back on this in a little while. It's been about 2.5 hours now. I have opened this thing up once or twice to check the temperature and add some more wood. Excuse me. This thing is just about ready. You can see that the color has changed dramatically from earlier. It's gotten nice and dark. That's a lot of the smoke going on there. And got a meat thermometer here. Just check the temperature at the base of the thigh. You can also see on the camera there, see how the meat and the skin is starting to pull away from the end of the leg bone? That's also a good indicator there. So this did take a little bit longer than initially expected. It's not an exact science. So the temperature that you're probably shooting for on this, if you can maintain it, if you can monitor it closely, between about probably 250 and maybe 325 is good. The lower end of that is going to take a little longer. The upper end is going to take a little bit less time, but you got to kind of go with what you can work with. So we're going to take this thing inside and cut it up and serve it. You might be able to see a little bit better now that we're back inside and a little bit closer. I mentioned something about the way that the skin and the meat was pulling away from the bone a little bit. You can see how that's pulled from the end here on both sides. That's a good indicator. And I believe I don't know if I mentioned the temperature. You should be looking for an internal temperature on this about 160, 165 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing broken down, and we'll show you how it looks. So I took a few minutes, and you want to let the bird rest for a good 10 minutes or so after it comes off the heat. A, it's a little easier to handle that way. B, it kind of helps to retain the juices a little bit. One of the things I like about doing this, it comes out nice and moist and juicy. And as dark as that skin is, you can see that the meat is still nice and light. So don't think this is burnt, because it's not. If you do need a refresher on how to carve a bird or break down a chicken, I do have some previous episodes on stuff like that, so those are worth checking out. I've got a little bit of rice here and some southern green beans. I'm going to take a piece of this, slide that on there. Barbecue sauce is optional, but it's awful good that way. Put that on the plate, not on the bird. Smoke roasted chicken, worth trying.